Often considered one of London's biggest public transport blunders, the Mercedes-Benz Citaro articulated buses, known almost universally as the Bendy Buses, were introduced as a desperate attempt to replace the aging AEC Routemaster double-deckers, as new health and safety and disability discrimination laws loomed over the operators of the capital's bus network. However, what resulted was an almost entirely ill-suited vehicle that struggled from the first day to operate within the largely unique nature of London's street network, with its issues of length and size being compounded further by overheating and fire problems that put a dangerous edge onto these already disliked buses, ultimately resulting in their removal from service within a decade of their arrival. The arrival of the Bendy buses onto the streets of London was done as a result of an urgent need to replace the iconic though aging AEC Routemasters of the 1950s, the main bone of contention with these double-decker buses being their lack of disability access and the open platform step entrance that was considered a serious hazard for passengers attempting to climb aboard or alight while the vehicle was in motion. While the Routemaster had many supporters, who cited their mechanical fitness despite their age, their practical body shells, iconic aesthetic and the innate efficiency of the open rear platform for loading and unloading, the inescapable fact was that the last of these buses had rolled off the production line in 1968, meaning the youngest members were over 30 years old by the turn of the new millennium. However, attempts to replace the Routemasters in the past had been notably unsuccessful, with the likes of the Daimler DMS being prone to overheating due to its inadequate cooling system for the stop-start traffic of London, while the Scania Metropolitan and Leyland Titan were the only newer bus models to make any real headway in replacing Routemasters on the wider network. It was only thanks to the privatisation of London buses in 1989 that the Routemasters remained a dominant fixture of the capital's public transport scene, as with the loss of state subsidies for the 11 individual bus franchises now operating across London, second-hand Routemasters were now essential to provide the backbone of their service while operating at the lowest possible costs. Come the year 2000, though, new disability discrimination and health and safety legislation, being enacted under the government of Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair, meant it was imperative for the Routemaster to be removed from frontline service in London at the first opportunity, with a national requirement being that, by 2015, all public buses would need to be low-floor accessible. While it had been proven that the Routemaster could be replaced by more modern double-decker bus designs, as had been the case for various private bus companies outside the capital, London's unique nature within the British bus industry, which required high capacity and the ability to show exceptional reliability in the face of highly intensive stop-start traffic, meant new buses needed to be tailored specifically for London's streets. Therefore, trials began during 2001 to test the effectiveness of various different bus designs within central London, one of which was the employment of two Wright Eclipse fusion-bodied Volvo B7LA articulated buses hired from First Hampshire in Dorset in October of that year, one of which was repainted into First London's red livery. Furthermore, 6 Wright fusion-bodied Volvo B10LAs were also brought in from First Glasgow for a trial on Route 207 between Shepherd's Bush and Hayes Bypass, while the Wright Eclipse Gemini, a low-floor double-decker variant of the Fusion, saw introduction on London's network during 2001 as a potential double-decker replacement for the Routemaster. The trial of Wright Fusions, as based at First London's Greenford Garage in Ealing, lasted for 6 months, during which time the buses proved to not have many serious problems in their operation due to the generally straight and largely suburban nature of the Hayes to Shepherd's Bush route, though ultimately, no orders would result from these trials, and the buses were returned to their original companies during late 2002. However, amid the trials of the Fusion articulated buses, the desire to introduce these single-decker replacements for the Routemasters led to the order of a more advanced Bendy bus design in the form of the Mercedes-Benz Citaro 0530G, of which 31 examples were initially delivered for a combined peak vehicle requirement of 28, though rigid, non-articulated versions were also procured to augment the wider double-decker bus fleet. The Mercedes-Benz Citaro 0530G had 3 doors, seated 49, and had space for 91 standees, while in order to help speed up journeys, passengers could board and alight at any door, but had to purchase tickets before travelling, each of the buses costing £200,000 per unit, thus equating to an overall sum of £78.6 million for the entire 393-vehicle fleet that would be employed in London. June 5, 2002 would see the first of London's bus routes be fully converted to articulated vehicles, these being the 507 Waterloo-Lambeth Bridge Victoria and the 521 Waterloo-London Bridge. The arrival of these gargantuan vehicles within the narrow streets of the ancient capital, attracting a large amount of media attention, as more units were employed on routes 12, 18, 25, 29, 38, 73, 149, 207, 436, and 453. To this end, the Bendy Buses achieved their mission of facilitating the replacement of the high-floor Routemasters with low-floor vehicles, a process that had begun in 1993 with single-decker buses and from 1998 with double-decker buses, thus meaning that by 2005, the last Routemasters in frontline service could be retired 10 years ahead of the national requirement set down by the British government. However, what the vehicles gained in low-floor accessibility and a capacity of 140 over the Routemasters' capacity of 77, they lost in terms of their physical dimensions, the Citaros being 18 metres long when compared to the 9.1 metre length of the Routemasters, but had very little benefit over the double-deckers, presenting an 11.8 centimetre road surface length per Routemaster passenger against a 12.8 centimetre per articulated bus passenger, an increase of only 8.7%. When on the move, the Citaros proved to be very difficult to manoeuvre through the tight streets of London's historic centre, and frequently blocked junctions as they attempted to navigate hard corners, while at the same time presenting a reduced viewpoint for the driver and thereby increasing the chances of cyclists being caught in blind spots. Fare evasion was another major issue for the Bendy Buses, as with the ability for passengers to enter via any door, instances of riders sneaking onto the rear section to avoid paying fares led to these vehicles being dubbed the free bus, in contrast to other cities that employed articulated vehicles, wherein only the front door is used for access, while the other two are exit only. As a result, Transport for London recruited an extra 150 revenue protection inspectors to police revenue collection, though by 2006, it was reported that conventional buses, such as double-deckers and non-articulated single-deckers, accounted for only £3,636 of fare evasion per year, while by comparison, the articulated vehicles accounted for up to £6,333 of lost revenue per year. More worrying, though, was the issue of overheating and fire damage that emerged very early on in the careers of the Citaros on London streets, the first instance taking place in December 2003, when one vehicle running the 436 between Paddington and Lewisham burst into flames on the Edgware Road, this being followed by a further two incidents in January 2004 on the 436 at Camberwell in South London and Park Lane. After the Park Lane incident, which saw the bus in question burn to the ground but with no injuries, Transport for London withdrew all 120 of the vehicles that were in service at the time, pending an investigation. The loss of this additional capacity meaning limited services on some routes and extra buses on others need to be provided, while Route 521 was suspended outright. The buses would eventually be brought back into service after engineers replaced and modified the problematic pipework in the bus engines that had been identified as the cause of the fires, but reliability remained dubious at best, and with these vehicles continuing to exhibit various mechanical faults, many services maintained the use of Routemasters in order to cover for broken-down Citaros. Come 2008, a new mayor for London was elected in the form of Boris Johnson, who, as part of his campaign, pledged to withdraw the Bendy Buses due to their complete unsuitability for London streets, with retirements of these vehicles beginning during July 2009, with routes 38, 507 and 521 seeing their Citaros replaced by conventional single-decker buses. The withdrawal of the Bendy Buses didn't go without controversy, though, as research by London Travel Watch indicated that their removal could prove costly to Transport for London, with a study conducted during September 2008 on the 38, 507 and 521 routes, indicating that efforts to maintain the capacity of the Citaros with conventional single and double-decker buses would cost an additional £12.6 million per annum. While these costs were rooted in the need to procure and operate additional vehicles running more frequent schedules to match the capacity of the Citaros, as well as the need to pay early termination fees on the leases of the vehicles that would be conducted at significant expense, withdrawals continued throughout 2009 and into 2010, with articulated buses being replaced by Dennis Trident double-deckers on Route 38 in November 2009. Meanwhile, in order to provide a vehicle of equal capacity but far less road space than the Citaros, Transport for London began development of the new Routemasters, which would be constructed by Wrightbus of Northern Ireland, with the first prototype being delivered for early testing in 2011, followed by a full service entry for the new buses commencing in February 2012, with Route 38 receiving the first units. As for the Bendy Buses, with the arrival of the new Routemasters imminent, the last of these vehicles were withdrawn from Route 207 on December 10, 2011, and various depots across London, including West Ham, would become Bendy Bus graveyards, as the many retired examples sat languishing in storage, awaiting an uncertain future. However, the former London Citaros were far from life expired, and would find their way into the fleets of Arriva Midlands in Leicester and Arriva Northwest in Liverpool, while the Go-Ahead Group operated former London units in Brighton and Hove and the North East. Elsewhere, CT Plus, Bristol and McGill's Bus Services Glasgow also received ex-London vehicles, while Arriva would subsequently export 81 of their units to Malta in 2011 for use by its Arriva Malta subsidiary, though one vehicle, Mike Alpha Lima 15 from the Red Arrow batch, has been preserved by the Bromley Bus Preservation Group. To summarise, the introduction of articulated buses within the City of London was a wrong-headed solution to the need for replacing the venerable AEC Routemaster, particularly due to the fact that the extreme length of these buses, coupled to the notorious congestion and narrow streets of the city, made them difficult and potentially unsafe to operate on a widespread basis. This, coupled with the issues of poor visibility for cyclists, the ability for fare dodgers to sneak unnoticed aboard the rear section, and the early issues of overheating and fire, led to what is often considered to be the worst bus model ever operated within the British capital, attested to by the fact that their careers were cut short after only 9 years of service.